Hi there, my name is Potatoes953 and welcome back to my channel. This is the second part of my Valkyria Chronicles review of the entire series. Today we do the first and the fourth game. Last time we did the second game and an overall recap of how the games work. But I'll just it's just hi. Yeah. Now we come to the cult classic game that I'd argue really kicked JRPG fans and strategy fans to try the other side. The first game was released on PS3 and PC in 2008 with a remaster on all modern consoles aside from the Wii U and Switch, but not PC, coming in 2014 which was a minor graphical update with no new features aside from the 3 DLCs being preloaded on the disc. The PS3 version later came to the Switch with all DLC preloaded, hence the reason why it's called Valkyria Chronicles for Nintendo Switch, rather than just Valkyria Chronicles Remastered. And this game already looked pretty good on the PC and PS3 version, but so my updates are fairly minor aside from the game running a lot better. I mean, it doesn't run poorly in the original version, but it gets a bit choppy when there's a lot happening on the screen. 1935 EC. The Imperials invade Gallia in search of precious resources they need to continue running their war machine. You follow Lieutenant Welkin Gunther as he is thrown into the thick of the conflict and joins the militia, a volunteer army only called up in time of external threat, and turns Squad 7 from a rowdy militia squad into the saviors of Gallia. The game's story has so much character to it with very little downtime. Every chapter you play in has an operation that is vital to winning the war, aside from maybe the Barius Desert, but that's I don't know. Furthermore, the game never shies away from showing dark stuff in war, like civilians getting slaughtered at the beginning of the game. Additionally, the game also has the best representation of the Holocaust shown to be in a video game. And it isn't even a World War II game. And I am not alone with that statement. In the same way that 10 minutes of a Band of Brothers episode spends liberating Krakow, this game has some of the most powerful depictions of it spread into an hour-long chapter. As in, it shows and tells what it needs to tell and show without overstaying its welcome. It also has some of the cool scenes that almost every war game or movie shows, like storming a heavily fortified beach, trench warfare, and a desert mission. The only big one it doesn't have is storming a capital and a bagration. These missions that I just described may sound disjointed and scatterbrained, but unlike something like Call of Duty World War II, all of these missions blend together and flow in a great way that all serve a good reason plot-wise. This game also shows the gruesomeness of war without gratuitous amounts of blood and or gore, being that it is a teen-rated game and cannot show blood, gore, and whatnot. And honestly, I feel that this game is more powerful because of that. So many games feel that the only way of showing or explaining something, their message, is to show gratuitous amounts of gore and blood and whatnot. But the thing is that a game doesn't need that. If it has powerful writing and powerful gameplay, it doesn't need to do that. That is one of the pitfalls so many games have had, and I've especially noticed because I've started doing these reviews. For example, with this particular game, you hear radio chatter as fights around you happen, and you can hear squads or individual men getting mowed down or go into a panic. This is also shown by Silvaria, Bless, and the Marmota as they mow down everything in their way. And in gameplay is shown through, for example, the trench warfare mission that I mentioned earlier, where an unskilled player can lose a lot of squad members due to some very conveniently placed machine guns. And the fact that in this game, if you don't get a medic don't get a squad member to a down squad member, or a enemy trooper walks over them, they fucking die. And at the end of the game, in the credits, you see a memorial to them, which is a really neat idea. So it basically just what I'm saying is, it shows the gratuitous, or not, it doesn't show gratuitous, it shows the gruesomeness of war, and the loss within that, without ever really showing it, for example. Like, yeah, I think you get my point. The only real one that I can really think of is, when, a certain character gets, killed, on screen. But that's really it. Yeah. Yeah. This game definitely has the weakest squad dynamic of than the rest of the games. In 2, there are these cute little scenes where Avon is hanging out with his classmates that you can do, leading into a mission, and there is one for every classmate in the game. And in 4, there are the squad stories, which are self-enclosed stories, involving multiple squad members. In this first game, there is none of that, aside from purchasing chapters from Elliot that, unlock potentials and fill out the story of the main characters. Additionally, it doesn't use any of the squad members in animated cutscenes or normal dialogue scenes, outside of the ED Detachment DLC, that is. Like what Valkyria 2 and 4 did. For example, you can very easily pick out certain squad members in 2, and in a couple of scenes in 4, they use actual squad members from the game in the cutscenes. Hell, you could replace all of the soldiers with placeholders, like in the cutscenes, and you would never... and it wouldn't really change anything story-wise. However, you would never want to do that, because squad members are some of the most unique and hilarious in the series. Like, Selena's has a potential called Tank Lover, and his voice line says this.
Who's a sexy tank?
The gameplay here is a classic, and is the second best in the series due to how understandable it is and how well the battle flows. Infantry and tanks are so balanced together unless you spec out your infantry for the express purpose of destroying tanks. This blend of infantry and tank combat allows for this game to have the second best balance for the AI, which is merely because the AI, it's merely because the AI can't figure out what's a tree versus what is your troops. Not even joking, the AI in Paradox games is better. It's the AI is far more balanced in 2 due to just how overpowered they are in that. And in 4, the player is so overpowered comparatively to the AI, but I'll get into that when I talk about Valkyria 4. But regardless, the balancing in this game is way better than something like the 4th game, because, like I said, the 4th game is really unbalanced in the favor of the player. I want to talk about the missions, because they are some of the coolest and most memorable in the series, comparatively to the 2nd and 4th game. Don't get me wrong, those games have some of the coolest missions in the series. However, the majority of them I just simply don't remember. As of writing this section, I was about halfway through finishing my replay of Valkyria 4, and I remembered a grand total of 2 missions up to that point. With this first game, I remember a good number of them, and I even remember the names without looking them up. For example, a desert duel, saving the princess, a showdown on the Marmota, liberation of Thousand, storming Mulberry Shores, battle for Magyar Plains, duel for Magyar Plains, and duel at Fortress Garlandio. I could go on, however, you get the point. There is also a very good mixture of missions with no gimmicks versus ones with missions, which is a thing that Valkyria 4 failed at, where after a certain point, almost every mission has some form of gimmick. There is a fine amount of missions with weirder objectives, like the one where extra article that you can buy from Elliot, where you destroy a platoon of tanks for the glory of vegetables, and another article where you must wipe out an entire Imperial squad without a single one escaping. Now, compare this to Valkyria 4, where after a certain point, every single story mission has some form of boss or obnoxious gimmick that makes, like, sure, it makes the game, these missions more interesting than if they were just a normal mission, but I would have preferred a better mixture of them. Overall, this game is definitely the most well-rounded out of the three that we're looking at. However, there are a few issues tied to age, like the physics being a bit weird at times, and slowdown on the Switch port, which only really is really only that bad, on the Fortress Garlandio mission, and the mission where you destroy the Marmota's main armory. One of my major issues with this game is that it's pretty short. Only about 20 or so chapters. Or exactly 20 chapters to be exact. With each chapter being about 1 to 2 hours long. But it really isn't too big of an issue, because there's essentially no pad time or filler, and the story is always chugging away. But I would have preferred to have a lot more missions, but it's neither here nor there. The story is really, really good, with characters that are really well written, especially the bad guys. They're or the antagonists. They're so well written that they're sympathetic to the point of me partly rooting for the Imperials. And the main characters are just the same way. All of the main squad members have fantastic dialogue, fantastic writing, and the voice acting is tremendously good. It's just too bad that in the fucking DLC where you play in Valkyria 4, where you work with Squad 7, they didn't get the original voice actors, and they managed to ruin half of the characters. The gameplay is really fun and engaging, and the missions are fun. Aside from the length, I can't find much wrong with it. It's available on all current gen consoles and PC. Go buy this game and play it. It sits around $15 used and $20 new or off of online marketplaces. Overall, it is a fantastic game that still holds up really, really well today, and you absolutely need to play it. So, I'm writing this right after finishing my replay of Valkyria 4. And this time, with this playthrough, I did the secret ending. Let's get into it, because I have a lot to say. 4 pages worth of script to say. Valkyria Chronicles 4 was released on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC on March 21st, 2018, and to be honest, I wasn't really interested. That was until I finished the second game on my PS Vita. Keep in mind, I hadn't replayed the original game in years, and so the fourth game wasn't all that interesting. And Valkyria 4 didn't completely flop. It crossed the 1 million copies sold late last year, and there are quite a few reasons why it was a really slow burn for it to reach that million mark. First off, Sega failed entirely to market this game. Like, come on, Sega. You're going to do what you're doing what Nintendo does, where you don't market a game and you put it on in an impossible scenario, and then blame the series when it doesn't succeed. Second off, it came out in March of 2018. What do you fucking expect, Sega? It got overshadowed by far, far, far bigger games. Like, I don't know, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2. In addition to this, its E3 reveal got screwed over by stuff like, I don't know, The Last of Us 2, which was a fucking incredible moment in gaming history. But then the game kind of fucking sucked. And third off, the Valkyria name had been was tainted by one major glaring problem: Valkyria Revolution. Sega had attempted to appeal to the West with something Square Enix did with Final Fantasy, turning a turn-based RPG into a real-time RPG, which was terrible, and which really worked for Final Fantasy. But it doesn't work for a tactical RPG at all. Keep in mind, literally 6 months after Valkyria Revolution flopped onto store shelves, Persona 5 stole our hearts. Or most people's hearts. I still fucking hate it. And this showed Japanese developers that Westerners still love turn-based games, which is mind-boggling to me, seeing how XCOM 2 managed to sell a lot of copies and is beloved by even people who don't play strategy games. So it doesn't make sense to me why Japanese developers still think that Westerners aren't interested in turn-based games. Now, one would think that after Valkyria or Persona 5, it would be a total recipe for success for Valkyria Chronicles 4. But as aforementioned, Sega fucked up the marketing and fucked the release date. Okay, I'm done yelling about Sega, about this fucking game. Let's actually start talking about if this game is actually worth your money. But first, we have something to go over. You see, I bought the Memoirs of War edition of this game. So let's find out if the collector's edition stacks up very well. Well, in this edition of the game, it comes with a controller skin, fuck this shit, a box, a very small yet still pretty neat art book, 2 DLC, and a figurine of the Hafen, the tank in the game. Okay, none of that legitimately matters to me aside from the model tank. And it's actually why I bought this edition. The model is actually perfectly sized for 32mm miniatures, if you're interested in that, which is why I bought it. And honestly, it's a really nice piece of terrain for This Is Not a Test, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, Star Wars Legion, or Warhammer 40k, and it's really not that bad. Anyways, back to the review of the game, or whatever. Fuck. It is August 1935 EC. The Federation is losing. Pretty bad, actually. And they're about to start a counterattack. Operation Northern Cross. You follow Claude Wallace as he commands the Squad E of the 32nd Regiment of the Edinburgh Ranger Corps. This squad is majority made up of foreign nationals, mainly from Gallia. You follow them through the start and to the end of Operation Northern Cross and Operation Cygnus. The game revolves around the desperate defense of the Empire as they protect their capital. With great characters, amazing scenarios, and an interesting premise, why do I hold the story so low? Well, I'll tell you. But later. I'll tell you later. But first, I must talk about the game itself. However, back to the characters. They're great. And the voice actors' performances in this game are very helpful towards giving these characters light. However, can I ask, why the fuck is the entire English cast uncredited? Like, legitimately, that's really shitty. Instead, Atlas USA in general is credited for the English cast, which sure, they handled it, but still, that's kind of a shitty thing to do, to uncredit an entire voice cast. Just pointing out. Okay, so, on to the actual game. If you're seeing the background footage, you can tell how much of an upgrade this game is compared to the other two games. In addition to the much prettier graphics, there are a ton of updates to the gameplay. They got rid of the morale and armor system from 2, which is kind of dumb. However, it is completely forgiven for the new stuff they added, like the new additions to the abilities of commanders. The main one being how you're able to have up to 2 soldiers following them. This allows you to save on CP, while keeping your foot soldiers moving across the massive maps. In addition to this, you can get the Centurion, which is the ship in the game, to give you ship orders that include stuff like bombardments. This replaces the more useless commands that virtually nobody used in the previous games. There are also 3 tanks you get throughout the game's main story. The Hoffen, which houses Claude Wallace and allows you to do ship orders and orders in general. The Glory, which is a carbon copy of the Shamrock from the first game. The Cactus, which is an APC that functions the same way as an APC in 2. The additional tanks give you a lot more leeway in how you approach each mission. Now, where Valkyria 2 was on the extreme hard side of the spectrum, this game is on the extreme easy side. With the new abilities of the player, you would think that the AI would get these abilities too, right? I don't even need to give you an answer to that question. In Valkyria 1, both sides were very balanced, with the player getting very tough and rowdy troops to allow you to beat the insane numbers. In Valkyria 2, they took away a lot of the troops that the player could field, and increased the number of OP enemies and bosses. In 4, they got rid of those OP enemy variants. They gave you the amount of soldiers back, in addition to giving the player new abilities. This makes this game extremely easy, to the point where I set my little brother up with it, and had him try one of the harder missions in the game, and he breezed through it with a bunch more... he breezed through the more difficult missions with at least C ranks. The missions in this game are fairly forgettable. Not as forgettable as 2's, but that's not saying much. The final boss is very unique for the series, but because instead of being a Valkyria, it's just a big fuck-off tank. The final boss, this game also generally focuses on more conventional fighting than in the first than the second game, with only 4 missions having Chimera, the Valkyria of this game, as an obstacle. And the main protagonist antagonist, not protagonist, / boss of this game being Valtz, a totally insane tank commander with a very OP tank who shows up about 7 or 8 times, I don't care to count. This game does have some of the coolest missions in the series, like the Ziegfall Line missions, and the mission where you're storming the capital, and the mission in the Crevasse. However, we are still missing a big ration. What the fuck, Sega? All I want to do is get on a wooden raft and die to machine gun fire on the way across. Furthermore, the missions and the graphics in general look goddamn gorgeous. Because of the game actually using the power of the current-gen consoles, they were able to make the game look absolutely great, with its unique hand-drawn or watercolor-esque art style, with the main difference being its more watercolor like approach to the visuals comparatively to the second and first game. The first game went for more of a comic booky feel, and the second game went for more of a manga feel. I don't know how to put it. Additionally, there are some great animation overhauls that makes the game feel a lot smoother to play, like Raz actually feeling like he bobs up and down as he runs. This is a major difference to 2 as the game actually as that game feels stagnant within the animation department. Now, why do I hold this game lower than the other 2? Well, it comes in the way the game feels when it comes to its place in the series and world. The game starts off strong, with the main reference to 2 being the fact that Operation Northern Cross is represented in 2's opening cutscene. Later on in the game, Forsetti, one of the antagonists that I don't care to mention because he's not very interesting, references Dr. Forster, who is an anti-hero in 2 being that she's a doctor who works on artificial Valkyria, and more specifically, the main focus of Valkyria 2's story being the artificial Valkyria project. Now, why is she an anti-hero? Well, she does shitty things, but it's for the greater good of Gallia, right? Now, everything in the story works up until the very end of the game, when Claude chooses to not fire the big fuck-off bomb. Because the war ends in a ceasefire and everyone lives happily ever after like a fucking Disney movie. Now, if you watched my first part and you heard my recap of Valkyria 2's story, you would know that the dates don't line up, as in that game, the war has been going on for 2 more years after, presumably, it doesn't end, it doesn't end in the year you spend in that game. How does this game's ending work within that context? It doesn't. Even with the quote-unquote true ending, which you get after beating the game and watching a very anime cutscene, it doesn't work. The only way I can think of Valkyria Chronicles ending working is that if after Squad E leaves the capital, the war starts back up again. And they and the Centurion's crew flee to Gallia, becoming fugitives of the Federation. In the quote-unquote true ending, the only difference is that Claude is, instead of standing alone in front of the Miller factory, Squad E and the Centurion's crew show up. A better ending would have been if Dr. Forrester and Loris Kluivert, I don't know how to say his name, the headmaster of Lancel Academy, came up to Claude and Riley and asked them to work on Project Valhalla, which is the artificial Valkyria project in 2. This would have tied up the loose ends and would have the glaring plot hole in 4, and it would have given me and the one other person who played the second game a massive nod. And it also may have had more interest in people getting a remake of 2, and maybe we would have a remake of 2 by now. This would have been a far better ending, but no, Disney new endings are the only way that Sega knows how to end a game on. Anyways, aside from the story not being what I personally wanted as a fan of the series, Valkyria Chronicles 4 is still a good game that needs more attention like the second game. It is available on PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Switch, and sits around $20 to $30. And if nothing else, it is a fun game with a great cast of characters, and if you're a fan of Persona or any of Atlus's titles, you'll have a fun time picking out the voice actors who did Persona 5 and Catherine. Anyways, on to the next section. Do I think the series is still good? Go play this game. It's also very good. It's just not what I personally wanted. It's kind of the same opinion I have about Persona 5 The Royal, where it's just like, it's not what I wanted. Is the series still good? Yes. Absolutely yes. The series has 3 of the highest quality strategy RPG games in the industry. The game that I would most recommend to start with is the first game. Not only because it's chronologically the first game in the series, or well, technically the second, but it doesn't matter. But because it holds up tremendously well, even if it's 12 years old. It's seriously 12 years old. And it holds up tremendously through its gameplay, and even its graphics hold up really well, especially with the remaster. Definitely, and it's the most balanced for both sides. And the story is still the story is good. It's really good. What is the one that I would least recommend? I hate to say it, but 2. 2's controls and graphics do not hold up well at all, and definitely should not be your first experience with the series. I really hope this series isn't going to be killed off like so many of Sega's other series. But with such a devoted fan base, Sega hasn't given up on it. However, I think that in order for the series to be truly great, Sega needs to to be truly successful, Sega needs to not give a half-assed attempt at marketing the bloody thing like they did with 4. And they don't, and they certainly don't need to put it on a dying or dead console or a portable and not market it either, like what they did with 2 and 3. With 3, it did so bad in Japan, they never localized it to here. Like, what the fuck, Sega? Why are you giving these games such a hard fucking time to actually be able to succeed? That's one of your problems, is that you have such high expectations of these games, and then you don't actually give them the chance to beat those expectations. Anyways, I hope you all at least look into the series, and I really do strongly suggest you play the games. And as always, have a fantastic day and a fantastic life. Goodbye.